In April 2025, a review landed in Forbes that stopped the internet cold. 8 words published hours after the White Lotus Season 3 finale, describing a character as possibly the single worst character in series history. Screenshots hit social media before anyone had time to read the full piece. Fans of one of the most recognized women alive declared war online. Hundreds of thousands of engagements in hours. And then, buried in the sentence that immediately followed, came the line that the screenshot warriors had no interest in sharing. The writer added, "This was not her fault, and she is a perfectly good actress, but they gave her absolutely nothing to work with." One sentence of fury. One sentence of absolution. Somewhere between those two lines lives the entire story of Lisa's Hollywood debut, and why it is more complicated and more interesting than either her fans or her critics will admit. Her full name is Lalisa Manoban. The world knows her as Lisa. She is the Thai-born solo artist and Blackpink member who holds Guinness World Records, commands over 107 million Instagram followers, and has performed in arenas on 6 continents. She was the first solo K-pop artist to win at both the MTV Video Music Awards and the MTV European Music Awards. Music was already conquered. Fashion was already conquered. So when she landed a role in HBO's The White Lotus, one of the most critically acclaimed prestige dramas of the last decade, the question was never simply whether she could perform. The question was whether a system historically skeptical of K-pop crossover talent, of Asian artists operating outside their home market, of anyone who arrives at an audition already globally famous, would actually let her in. Not just cast her, but recognize her, welcome her, invite her to stay. This is the full unfiltered story of what happened when those cameras rolled in Thailand. What critics said in print, what they said off record, what the industry whispered, and what Lisa's next 2 years of confirmed work tells us about whether Hollywood's door is genuinely open or still only cracked. 1. The expectations versus reality setup. When Variety broke the casting news in February 2024, the reaction came in 2 simultaneous waves. The first was pride. K-pop fans responding to their global icon stepping into prestige television, a space historically occupied by industry lifers who spent decades in regional theater before anyone noticed them. The second wave was quieter, more private, and considerably more anxious. Could she actually act? And more precisely, would Hollywood take the performance seriously, or would this be a one-season brand exercise, a content marketing event dressed up as a casting decision? The context made the anxiety reasonable. Lisa was not the first Blackpink member to attempt a Western acting transition. Her bandmate Jennie had appeared in The Idol in 2023, a project that collapsed spectacularly under controversy, dragged everyone connected to it through the discourse machine, and left the industry's memory of it almost entirely negative. That precedent sat over Lisa's announcement like storm weather. Journalists noted the comparison within hours of the casting news breaking. The crucial difference, most agreed, was the vehicle. The Idol was a flaming wreck. The White Lotus had won 10 Emmy Awards across 2 seasons, launched Jennifer Coolidge's career into its most celebrated chapter, turned Megan Fahey into one of the most in-demand entertainers working, and established creator Mook White as one of the most trusted names in prestige television. The platform was right. Whether the man building that platform wanted Lisa on it was a different matter entirely. He didn't. Not initially. In an April 2025 behind-the-scenes piece published by The Hollywood Reporter, Mook White made a surprisingly candid admission. When Lisa's name first surfaced as a potential cast member, he didn't know who she was. He only knew that a Blackpink member had appeared in The Idol, and his reaction was immediate and absolute. He described it himself. "We're not doing that." When he then learned that Lisa was famous enough in Thailand, where the season was set, to create significant security logistics for the production, his resistance solidified further. He didn't need the noise. His words on her cultural magnitude in her home country compared her to Taylor Swift and Princess Diana simultaneously. That kind of fame, on a show designed to be intimate and unglamorous, was exactly what he didn't want in his casting room. But there was an audition, and auditions tell you things that reputation can't. Producer David Bernard filled in the sequence. The team had already been to Bangkok, had already met with other actresses, and had a genuine frontrunner in mind before they traveled to Phuket for a private meeting with Lisa. What Bernard recalled was specific. She was humble, she had worked hard on her material, and she was fighting for this part with everything she had. She had taken acting lessons before flying to Thailand. She brought her mother with her. When she got the call confirming she had the role, she cried, in front of her team, most of whom had never seen the White Lotus and had no framework for what this moment meant to her personally. It wasn't about the industry. It was about wanting this specific role, on this specific show, badly enough to audition in secret at a private location in Thailand. Mook White ultimately cast her. But consider what she was walking into. She was not a blank slate Hollywood could project onto. She was one of the most recognized faces on Earth, entering a cast of established Western actors, filming in a country where her presence alone had required advanced security planning. The real test was not whether she could learn lines. The test was whether she could disappear into a character, rather than have the character disappear into her. The entire industry was watching to find out. 2. The performance breakdown. Her character's name is Mook Sorensen in the show's full credits. A health mentor at White Lotus, Thailand. One of those deliberately vague wellness roles that luxury resorts create for guests seeking something that sounds like enlightenment and costs like a mortgage payment. Mook is soft-spoken, composed, in deliberate contrast to the loud, self-destructing Western tourists who have descended on her world. She is the stillness in the frame. She moves through the resort with the quiet attentiveness of someone who has spent years observing other people's crises from a professional distance. Her central storyline anchors to Gaitok, a Buddhist security guard played by Thai actor Tame Thaptimthong, whose commitment to nonviolence is not philosophical decoration but the organizing principle of his entire identity. What develops between Mook and Gaitok is an unusual courtship, tender, glancing, constructed out of proximity and intention rather than direct declaration. Lisa described the character before the season aired as a flirtier, more ladylike version of herself, deliberately contrasting Mook's softness with her own self-described tomboy personality. On screen, that translation holds. When Mook smiles across a lobby at Gaitok, the warmth in the expression does not read as crafted. It arrives. For a performer with zero previous on-screen experience, that kind of ease is not a given. Where the character becomes genuinely compelling, and where Lisa's work generated its most sustained critical discussion, is in the season's back half, when viewers began to interrogate Mook's actual motivations. A figure initially coded as purely romantic becomes, in retrospect, someone who may have been quietly arranging the season's most devastating outcome. When asked in a press interview whether Mook was a good person, Lisa gave a technically affirmative answer, but with a slow, knowing smile that sent the internet into immediate theory territory. Marie Claire called it directly. In a season-closing piece, Mook was not playing the game the audience thought she was playing. While the Western characters consumed themselves with their various crises, Mook was doing something else entirely. The finale appeared to confirm the reading. Gaitok breaks his pacifist code, takes a fatal shot, and Mook exits the wreckage as arguably the only character in the season who ends up in a materially better position than where she started. Whether that lands as sophisticated character design or frustrating underuse became the central debate. And it is an argument that says as much about what viewers wanted from the show as it does about what the show chose to give them. Before any of that discourse could form, Lisa's co-stars had already offered assessments that carry their own weight. Amy Lou Wood, who earned individual Emmy recognition for her performance in the same season, told The Hollywood Reporter at the premiere that Lisa's first scene was a big one, that she handled it with openness and loveliness, and that the Mook and Gaitok storyline was one of her personal favorites across the entire season. Mook White called Lisa a great actress, publicly and on record, and described her as a genuine source of pride for Thailand. These are not promotional obligations. These are specific creative assessments from a director who had identified Jennifer Coolidge and Megan Fahey before he identified Lisa. When Mook White says someone can act, the industry has learned to take that at face value. 3. The unfiltered critical reception. Here is the version of this story that neither the fan accounts nor the takedown posts gave you cleanly. The honest account runs through contradictions, and those contradictions are more interesting than either narrative. The positive reception was real and came from credible sources. Amy Lou Wood's praise was specific and unsolicited. Mook White's public endorsement was on record. The Season 3 premiere episode scored a 9.9 out of 10 on IMDb shortly after airing, among the highest opening episode scores in the show's 3-season history. Viewers responding to that first episode noted, repeatedly, that Lisa's presence felt naturalistic and unforced. She didn't signal the effort. She didn't under-deliver. She occupied the frame with the ease of someone who had been doing this far longer than she had. In acting terms, especially for a debut, that is a meaningful thing to achieve. But the critical conversation, taken in full, fractures along one extremely specific fault line: Lisa's performance versus the character she was given to perform. The Forbes review that generated the viral discourse was unusually precise about this distinction. The character of Mook, the writer argued, existed primarily as a catalyst for Gaitok's moral collapse. A siloed figure with no independent story, no self-authored motivations, no arc that belonged to her alone. And then came the sentence that separated the take from a takedown. Lisa was a perfectly good actress given absolutely nothing to work with. Out.com reached an almost identical conclusion in its season retrospective. She did great, the character was a wasted opportunity, and the show had failed to use the full potential of the highest profile name in its ensemble. The piece noted that Mook was one of only 2 women of color in the main cast, and the one with the least screen time and the fewest scenes not defined by her relationship to a male character's emotional crisis. Read those 2 reviews together, and a clear argument emerges. The problem is not Lisa. The problem is structural. And the question that follows, whether a character that limited can still constitute a meaningful Hollywood debut, is exactly the kind of question the industry doesn't have a clean answer for. On the awards front, the results are a study in contradictions. The White Lotus Season 3 earned 23 Emmy nominations, placing it among the most Emmy-decorated drama seasons of recent years. HBO formally submitted Lisa in the Supporting Actress category. The Television Academy did not nominate her individually. The field she was competing in included Carrie Coon, Parker Posey, Amy Lou Wood, and Natasha Rothwell, all women with deep acting credentials and significantly more screen time. Whether the non-nomination reflected performance limitations, character limitations, or simply the competitive math of an exceptionally stacked ballot year, the industry did not explain and likely never will. What is documentable is this. Lisa's actual Emmy nomination in 2025 was not for acting. It came for outstanding choreography in variety or reality programming, recognizing her 2025 Oscars performance, a James Bond tribute alongside Doja Cat and Ray, as outstanding choreographic work. The first formal recognition Lisa received from a major American awards body honored her body moving through space, not words delivered in a dramatic role. She attended the Emmy ceremony alongside her White Lotus co-stars and was photographed on the red carpet in a leather couture gown that generated near-universal best-dressed coverage. Fashion recognized her without conditions. Acting offered a qualified verdict. The audience response divided along predictable lines. Blackpink's global fanbase was broadly supportive, finding ways to read the character's limited screen time as choice rather than constraint. General Western viewers outside the K-pop ecosystem were more skeptical, with widespread social media discourse questioning whether the casting was creatively motivated or commercially motivated, whether Lisa was cast because Mike White needed her talent, or because Netflix and HBO needed her 107 million Instagram followers to tune in. And that question, talent or transaction, is the one that the behind-the-scenes reporting doesn't fully resolve, because the honest answer appears to be, it started as skepticism about transaction and ended as surprise at genuine talent. Whether that sequence credits the industry or indicts it is a debate worth having. 4. What this means for her future. In September 2025, Lisa signed with WME, not a regional entertainment agency, William Morris Endeavor, one of the 2 most powerful talent agencies operating in Hollywood. Deadline's coverage of the signing described her White Lotus debut as a breakout turn. That word is not casually deployed in trade coverage. Breakout means the agency believes the trajectory justifies serious placement investment. It means rooms are being opened that were not previously open. It means the conversation has shifted from, can she do this, to what do we build next? What was built next answered the question faster than anyone expected. By October 2025, it had been confirmed that Lisa would headline Netflix's Tygo, an action thriller expanding the Extraction franchise, the same cinematic universe that launched Chris Hemsworth as a Netflix action star and produced one of the platform's most watched films in its history. The film introduces a Korean identity into the franchise, with Lisa co-starring alongside Don Lee, one of Korean cinema's most commercially dominant action stars, known internationally for Train to Busan, The Roundup, and Marvel's Eternals, and Lee Jin-uka, recognized globally through Squid Game. The director is Lee Sang-young, whose previous work is defined by kinetic, precisely choreographed action sequences. The producers are the Russo brothers' Agbo production company, the house behind the Avengers films. Filming locations included South Korea and Jakarta. Production wrapped officially in March 2026. Pause on the scale of that transition. From a secondary wellness mentor in a prestige drama to the lead of a major franchise action film, in the span of 7 months between announcement and production. The gap in scope is not gradual. It is deliberate and significant. And then there is the third project. Announced in February 2026, an untitled Netflix romantic comedy has been described in multiple trade reports as a contemporary take on Notting Hill, the 1999 Julia Roberts-Hugh Grant film about a globally famous figure who falls for an ordinary person. The screenplay is being written by Katie Silberman, who wrote Booksmart and Set It Up, bringing established credibility in female-driven commercial comedy to a project that appears designed around Lisa's actual real-world dynamic. The producer is David Bernard, the same David Bernard who produced The White Lotus and who reportedly bonded with Lisa on the Thailand set over a shared enthusiasm for classic romance films. The creative partnership on this Netflix project, in other words, is a direct extension of a set relationship from the first project. Lisa is also attached as an executive producer, a structural creative role that signals she is not simply being placed in a story someone else built, but is building alongside the people who built it. Consider the comparison class. K-pop artists who have attempted meaningful Western acting crossovers have almost universally encountered a ceiling. Boe, one of the most globally successful K-pop solo artists of her generation, appeared in Hollywood projects in the early 2010s without securing sustained traction in the Western market. Psy's Gangnam Style moment in 2012 generated enormous cultural heat but never translated into a longer entertainment career on Western terms. BTS members have signaled individual creative ambitions during the group's period of military service, but no single member has yet assembled a deliberate, multi-project acting portfolio in Western film and television, at the speed and with the level of institutional backing that Lisa has generated in 18 months from a single debut. The architecture of the three projects, White Lotus, Taigo, the untitled rom-com, is not accidental. Prestige television, commercial franchise action, accessible romantic comedy. These three categories cover entirely different audience demographics and entirely different risk profiles. And the executive producer credit on the third project, before the second has even been released, suggests she is not simply accumulating roles. She is building infrastructure. What industry observers have quietly noted is that the intelligence of the selection matters as much as the speed. The White Lotus gave her credibility and a prestige association that no amount of music accolades could replicate in a Hollywood context. Taigo gives her franchise-level commercial validity in a global action context. The rom-com, if Silberman's screenplay delivers and the film connects with audiences, gives her something that K-pop crossover artists have almost never achieved: a lead romantic role that positions her as a Western cinema star on purely character terms, not on the basis of existing celebrity. That is a specific gap in the market. And it appears to have been identified deliberately. Is Hollywood welcoming her? Based on what is documented, a WME signing, a franchise film lead, an executive producer credit, ensemble award recognition at the Globes and the Actor Awards, the answer is clearly yes, with more institutional momentum than most acting debuts generate. But the welcome is conditional in ways that the industry doesn't announce out loud. Hollywood does not fully commit to anyone on the basis of one role and a promising trajectory. It waits for the next role. And then the one after that. What seems clear is that Lisa understands this, and that she and her team are building accordingly. Here is where things honestly stand. Lisa walked into a system that did not know what to do with her. She played a character whose limitations were real, not because of anything she brought to the performance, but because of how that character was written into the story. She received no individual acting nominations during award cycles, in which her co-stars swept through prestige circuits. She did receive the ensemble recognition that comes with being part of a show nominated at the Emmys, the Golden Globes, and the Actor Awards. And within 18 months of that debut, she was headlining a Netflix franchise film and executive, producing a romantic comedy alongside an A-list screenwriter and one of HBO's most trusted producers. That is not the career trajectory of someone Hollywood quietly moved past. But it is also not yet the trajectory of someone the industry has committed to unconditionally, because Hollywood does not commit unconditionally. Not to anyone. Not without more evidence. And the next piece of evidence, Taigo, is in post-production right now. The difference between a Hollywood story and a Hollywood footnote is exactly one more defining performance. So here is the question we want to put to you directly, because this is genuinely worth debating. Is Hollywood welcoming Lisa? Or is Hollywood hedging its bets, keeping one hand on the door handle, waiting to see if the next performance justifies swinging it all the way open? Because those are very different things. And the answer you give says as much about how you read this industry as it does about her. If this kind of deep dive analysis is the content you want more of, subscribe and hit the notification bell. The next video goes somewhere most entertainment channels won't touch: the gap between how Hollywood announces it's embracing Asian talent and how it actually votes, nominates, and allocates leading roles. The receipts are there. We're going through them. You don't want to miss it.